So Jackson, what's up?
Not much. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Um, I've kind of started a little quarantine conversation series. Um, an idea I had for my YouTube channel, and you're basically the first one. I'm gonna see how it goes. Um, and Jackson, I met you a couple years ago now, right?
Yeah, I think it was back in 2018, I believe,
Yeah,
around Christmas time.
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you told me you're an atheist, and I said, "Oh wow, cool. Yeah, so am I." And we had several things in common, and we've kept in contact, and we have some similar interests. So uh, let's see. The first topic of conversation. How about it's Mother's Day, right? Recently. Why don't you tell me a little bit about because you mentioned this to me previously about your parents' kind of religious beliefs, kind of a different type of thing than what people are used to typically in the U.S. If you want to, just go ahead and like go into like what they believe and start there.
Okay, so my parents, as they were growing up, they were mainly Buddhists, and
Sure.
they are still Buddhists today.
Sure.
They still visit the temples from time to time, and it's not like a religious sort of thing that they do where they're there every Sunday and praying and anything like that. It's mostly just like whenever they feel like it's time to go. We do anniversaries on say if my grandparents' death anniversaries, we usually do that. There are certain rituals that we do, which is like basically visiting their graves,
Okay.
abstaining from doing certain things on their anniversaries, that sort of stuff. But from what I've witnessed growing up as a Buddhist, it was a very lax religion. Again, they mainly relied on certain teachings that again they don't follow to a T.
Right.
But overall, it's a very lax religion, as I recall. But yeah, no,
Okay.
they are still Buddhists to this day.
Now, I've noticed that there are various sects of Buddhism, and there are various ones that are non-theistic. So basically, they might even believe in reincarnation, but still not believe in a God, right? So are your
That
parents part of that denomination? I'm not sure. I don't remember what the sect is called. There might be more than one, but they don't really have a God in the picture. It's more of a philosophy even than necessarily a religion, right?
that is correct. So yeah,
Okay.
we do believe in reincarnation. I actually believe in it myself as well. I
Okay.
think our spirits, when we leave our bodies, they do get recycled again sometime down the road, and then
Okay.
we do, we get to live again in a different time or different era. And
Okay.
again, yeah, it's we don't worship any idols or anything like that. We
Right.
do have a shrine set up for our relatives or ancestors that's passed away recently, that sort of thing.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. So you're big on science. You're a big science guy. I know that. And you kind of try to keep up with the latest science, more or less. Is that right?
That's correct. I'm a
Okay.
big sci-fi fan. I love it when we make new discoveries,
Right.
especially what has to do with space. So yeah, I'm always on top of that.
So I'm just curious, how you reconcile your belief in a and reincarnation with neuroscience, because basically the neuroscience, the latest, up-to-date neuroscience is that we can see our memories and our thought processes through machines. The energy lights up, right? Also, we know we've known this for a long time. When you damage a part of the brain that is corresponds to, say, facial recognition or memory or something like that, it's gone. And when you're tired or you haven't had your cup of coffee, your brain state is altered, right? So it appears to be that our consciousness is very tied to our brain, and even it is our brain, right? It's our neurons firing. So how do you kind of reconcile that scientific, evidence-based picture with your beliefs, or do you, or
That's a
have you
good.
thought about it?
Yeah, I never thought about it scientifically, but
Okay.
when you put it in like that, the only idea I can really think about with that is that in space, you notice that everything is based on like energy and moving around, transferring from one place to another. We are traveling on a ball of dirt going through space, and it's always rapidly going
Yeah.
faster and faster. And it's almost like, if you really think about it, what if we are like these microscopic, small pieces traveling through space, and the same thing is happening through the same thing as our brain. I mean, if you really think about it, it's all these neurons that are bouncing back and forth, and and
Right.
again, I think that's going off topic. It's a little bit of
Well,
a
it's certainly
far-fetched
true that
theory.
a lot of scientific findings kind of conflict with our intuition because we evolved to survive Africa, right? To understand the like lions and tigers and trees, and we didn't really evolve to understand like the very fast, the very small, and like quantum physics, and the very big, like general relativity, the size of the universe. It goes against what we our intuition, right? So that's very true. But the thing is, when it comes to neuroscience, right, we have a lot of detailed analysis and evidence that really does point to that our consciousness is our brains, right? So when they die, the energy, goes, and we know when we die, we decompose, and our energy kind of keeps going on. Our atoms are turned into energy, E equals mc squared. Energy can be turned into matter, matter into energy. But it doesn't disappear. It goes back into the atmosphere, or it gets eaten up by flora and fauna in the ground. Um, so how do you do you care to reconcile that? If you care, how do you do it? That
That's a
specific
good question.
topic. Not
Yeah.
generally, but just that specific. I'm just curious if you thought about it.
You know what, tell you the truth, I never really thought about this that far. I
Okay.
just like to think that there's always something for us at the end of the tunnel. Like I always like the idea that at the end of our lifespan, that we do have another chance of living another life, right? So again, it,
Mhm.
it mostly has to do with the fact that maybe I just like that idea. But as
Yeah.
for explaining it
But
and
isn't that
trying
what other
to
religious people do? Is a lot of them, they like that, and then they'll try to find evidence to back up that predetermined conclusion. So you don't want to be accused of doing that potentially, right? Because
that
you're a science person. You care about what is true objectively, right?
that's
So I don't
true.
know. Maybe that's just something to think about. I mean, because we never had really had this conversation about,
Oh,
life after death. So yeah, that
yeah.
it's good food for thought, you know.
For sure.
Uh,
And like, I think that there's also still a lot of mysteries out there that science can't explain yet, is maybe because we just never had the
sure. Yeah,
understanding or the technology yet to
yeah,
understand that.
I agree.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's always, we always have to be careful about what we believe, especially if we don't have scientific backing to believe in such things, right? But I mean, like you're right. It's just an idea of mine that I like, and I guess maybe it has something to do with the way I was raised as well, because I
Sure.
know that
Yeah.
some people are raised certain ways, and it's
Yeah.
almost
Yeah.
like they're not brainwashed. I'm not going to use that word. That's a really, but they're
Right.
trained to think that way, right? So
What do
I
you
don't
think
know.
about
I
the
just
people that say mortality gives us our life significance, right? The fact that it ends gives it more meaning, right? Because some people would say if it goes on forever, then you kind of lose meaning and motivation. What do you think about that kind of idea, that kind of perspective? Because if you
I
say
think
there's a next life, why can't there be a next life after that, and then a next one and a next one? It's like a movie, right? It ends, but you don't say, "Oh God, I'm gonna stop watching this movie because it ends." It's a great movie, but God damn it, it ends. I'm not, you know what I mean? So, what do you
yeah.
think about that perspective? Does that resonate with you at all, or no?
It actually does. I
Yeah,
believe that if it gives more meaning to the life that you live, and it makes you kind of make your choices more wisely. I know people believe in different things, and I believe that if you do good in this life, and maybe this is a Buddhist karma thing, if you do good in this life,
okay,
you'll your next life, you'll either you'll have good karma following you all around, right? So again, that's something again that
So you believe
I
in
kind of
karma?
believe in. I really do, yes.
Okay, well this is
Only
I took some notes and these things did not occur to me. Okay, so again with science, right? One of the things is that the scientific perspective kind of gives us and tells us is that, you know, the universe doesn't care about us, you know? We're very small in the universe, and people, it doesn't matter their age or innocence or their religious beliefs or lack thereof, they get killed by hurricanes that randomly, slaughter children. And right now with our pandemic that's going on, how do you reconcile that with the idea of karma? Because it seems like, based on the scientific objective view, it's not really valid, right? Social capital, I'd say, is valid. We can earn social capital. We're a social primate species, and we have to live together. We're interconnected and interdependent, so we can gain social capital. There's benefit to being, looking good in the eyes of others, basically. Social capital, but that's not karma. Karma is like the universe is going to reward you if you do good, and it's going to get you if you do bad.
yeah.
So how do you kind of resolve that or reconcile that, if you've ever thought about that?
Yeah, you know
Do you have any?
what? When you explained it like that actually does make sense. Maybe because I
Yeah,
believe in karma, because good things are happening to me. But
sure,
maybe it's because I live in such a great country or
sure.
a great system, where it's democracy, nothing's being controlled. I live in an area where there's not many hurricanes or earthquakes and stuff, right? So
Yeah,
again, that kind of may influence the way I think a little bit.
but
But you're absolutely right.
isn't that the same kind of myopic view that religious people have? They say like, "Oh, I feel so good when I go to church and I sing, and something good happens to my grandma, and we got a new house," but they ignore the kids that are starving in Africa that they just need rain, but they never get it, right? And they're killed by malaria or whatever. It kind of doesn't make sense to project your personal subjective feelings or situation with the entire objective picture of things. You know what I mean?
That's
I
true.
mean, these are
Yeah,
maybe
I
things
noticed that too.
we've had conversations, but
Certain
we haven't
people
really had
think
these.
that maybe the reason why good things are happening to them or whatever, yeah,
Yeah,
it could be just because they think that, well, because God's looking after me, right? But
right.
you know,
But then that
in
would
the end
mean
result,
that would implicate God, that He's not looking after the other people, and all the people and all the kids that are dying. Like, I guess He's not looking after them, right? Kind of doesn't make sense. But yeah, yeah. So do you have any way to reconcile that further? Just karma with the fact that the universe doesn't seem to care about us objectively?
I believe the universe. Like, I know that we are very, very blessed that the chances of life surviving in the universe is very, very small. The percentages,
Yeah,
and we
most of
are
the universe
very
is just
blessed.
black,
Oh yeah.
radiation space. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so
very
we
fine
are
tuned, right?
blessed, and I believe maybe that's why certain people believe in certain things. They think like, oh, it happened for a reason.
Right. That's interesting. Another idea that I thought of, a lot of Eastern religions have an idea of they're not linear like Christianity and other Western religions, and they're very cyclical, like the reincarnation. They go in cycles, right? And so it occurred to me it'd be interesting if the universe is a cyclical universe, and we have a Big Bang and expansion collapse, and it goes in cycles, right? It expands and collapses. That would kind of make some of the Eastern religions kind of prophetic, right? If that ends up being true. Have you heard of the Karavaka? They're an ancient Indian religious sect, and they're atheistic. One of the oldest atheistic religious sects. You ever heard of them?
No, I'm not too familiar with that or informative
Okay.
about that. But yeah, can you please elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I just read about them when I read a lot about religious history, and I think they go back about 2,500 years ago. A sect in India, they grew up around Hinduism, and they really don't have any gods. They're pretty materialistic religion. It's been a while since I've read up on them, but I didn't know if you had even heard of them. But I found it very interesting. A lot of Eastern religions, they're very different. They evolve differently. So they're cyclical and not linear. They don't necessarily have gods, right? There's a lot of differences that I find very interesting. uh, with that
So
contrasting
what you're
question.
saying, is there a religion with no God? That's kind of
Yeah,
new.
basically. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
Never even knew about that.
Well, Buddhism, some sects of Buddhism don't have a god, right? So,
True.
yeah. So I find that very interesting. Do you think there's any reason for that? You think it's just, evolution of ideas and different places they evolve differently? And you think it has to do with the culture at all? Maybe say a Japanese or Asian culture might be different than the way it evolved in Europe, or what are your thoughts about that?
I believe religion starts to evolve as well, just like we do as a human species or whatever species. Like we all evolve, and it gets a little diluted at times. Sometimes people may throw certain things, and that's the thing with religion. And it's just so it's ever changing, right? I know that there are a lot of people base it on like ancient scriptures and but even that gets changed a lot, right?
Yeah,
And maybe that's why there's different sects that like you said, right?
right.
So yeah, I mean it's very hard to explain.
Even with Confucianism, it's not really deistic. It doesn't really have a god, does it? Confucianism, it's
It's
more
more
about
about
like
teachings.
family ties, yeah, kind of a philosophy more than a
Hmm.
religion. So, yeah, that's interesting. So Jackson, moving on to the next topic here, origins of the universe. What are your thoughts?
Well, the Big Bang Theory is always the most popular,
Right,
believable theory at this point. I mean, with the way the universe is expanding at such a fast rate,
right.
and how everything's expanding. Um, yeah, I believe that Big Bang is a very good theory. As
Hmm.
for there's other theories where the whole expansion going to a certain point and then going back, collapsing back middle, and then Big Bang happening again. I like that idea more than the I think it's called the heat freeze or something it's called, or
Well,
heat
they just
death.
heat death. Yeah, they
Yes,
discovered
that's the
dark
one,
matter and dark energy that seems to be propelling the
and that's
universe
ripping
to
everything apart.
expand,
Yeah,
right? And it's
it's
expanding
stronger than
stronger than the
anything.
gravity, so it's gonna die out, right? And heat death. It's gonna be cold nothingness. But the interesting thing is about, the heat death is even in empty space you have particles or you have energy, and energy can turn into matter, can turn into particles. So we could have another Big Bang birth from the death of this universe. Even if there's not a cyclical collapsing and expanding universe that goes on forever, there could be another universe born from ours, from the death of
Mm.
ours, right? So that's an interesting idea.
A
What do you think about it?
multiverse, kind of, right?
Yeah, well, our universe could have been birthed from another universe that's part of a multiverse. And people don't tend to
That's
understand
true.
with the Big
Yeah.
Bang.
I mean, like, there's so many theories out there. I mean, like,
Yeah,
even with the whole black holes, right? I mean,
yeah,
they're sucking up all this energy. Where is it going? Where does it go?
yeah,
There's no evidence of that.
yeah. Well, let's see. Yeah, the multiverse is very interesting. I read a book by Brian Greene about all kinds of different multiverses. So, there's the quantum many worlds interpretation of quantum physics, that says there's an infinite number of branching worlds that occupy basically a different dimension, but they're kind of overlapping with ours. So I'm sure you've heard that in sci-fi, right? That idea. Yeah,
Of
that's
course, yeah.
that's a real idea by a guy named Hugh Everett in the 50s, and he came up with it because of the measurement problem in quantum physics. When you try to measure a particle, it can be in like it's like a wave until you measure it. It's a particle. Like how does that affect that? Why does that happen? Right? And so all kinds of quantum weirdness. And the many worlds interpretation is gaining a lot of popularity with physicists, and I think it's mind blowing, interesting, and really it kind of gives you some consolation with your mortality because you could always think, hey, I failed in this endeavor in life, and maybe there's a version of me in another universe that succeeded and did this. It's kind of it's kind of it seems fantastical, but it's based in real science. Many physicists subscribe to that idea. One thing I wanted to mention with the Big Bang Theory is a lot of people think it's the beginning of the universe, and that's not what the theory says. It says that our universe used to be very small, but it doesn't say it started from nothing. It says it used to be very small and that's it, right? So maybe that it existed for forever like that. Because we say, what created the universe? God. Okay. Well, what created God? If you're gonna say God existed forever, you could say the universe existed forever, right? And the universe is simpler than God, and we know it exists. So these are old arguments, that I'm sure we've all had and thought about. Uh, but yeah, all kinds of multiverse theories are making a lot of ground in science, and it seems to be things are heading in that direction. So it's
There's
very,
that
very cool to think
other
about.
crazy theory. Yeah, there's this other crazy theory I heard that maybe the universe is just like somebody's experiment. Like who
Yeah,
knows, right? You ever heard about that?
yeah, I have. Yeah, there is simulation theory. There was a
Yes.
movie out, a sci-fi movie. It's kind of a low budget. You can find it on YouTube called The Mandela Effect. And basically, that is people have noticed sometimes people have memories of events that happened differently. Like a lot, like thousands of people have reported that Mandela, who was the president of South Africa, that he died in the 80s when he was in a camp, but he didn't. And there's been many weird things. Like sometimes you'll pick up a kid's book, like one of your kids' children's books, and you'll notice how like something is spelled Looney Tunes, right? Is it spelled Toon or Tunes? Looney Tunes, or how is it spelled? And like people have these memories of like things happening differently, and it's like weird. So people think, maybe you're shifting universes, or we're in a simulation and somebody changed the detail. So that's
I
pretty
heard
cool.
about that. I heard about
Yeah,
that. Ever
you
heard
can
of
look that up.
Berenstain Bears?
Do what?
Berenstain Bears?
Yeah, yeah, Bears. Yeah, that's another one.
That's
Yeah, that
another
was
one.
that
Yeah.
was in the movie. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting. You can get into some conspiracy theories there that kind of go off the rails, but it is an interesting thing to think about, you know. So Jackson, sci-fi. We already talked about a little bit of sci-fi. What's some good sci-fi you've seen, or some good ideas that you like in general, that all-time ideas that you think are pretty cool, or shows or movies or whatever. Like,
Uh, well, sci-fi's that like terraforming other planets. That's a really cool one.
yeah,
Traveling through like wormholes and stuff, time traveling
and
stuff
based
like that.
in real science. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And then
And
one of my most favorites is discovering extraterrestrials that turns into a horror theme pretty quick, right? Those are one of my
right.
favorites as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and the fine tuning argument, do you know about that? Theists say our universe is fine tuned for life because if you changed a certain variable, we couldn't exist. But we don't know all the different kinds of life that might be able to exist out there, right?
That's
So
true.
could be life based on silicon and not carbon, or who knows what, right? So yeah, it's interesting to think about, no
There's
doubt.
another theory that because we don't see it with our naked eye, there could be other living things, right? Just in like you said, it's just a different sort of chemical build and all that, right? So
Right.
again, I mean, it's we can only see what we can see and what
That's right.
our devices can detect, right? But
That's right. Well,
yeah.
have you heard the meme, the Christian meme, going around social media that says, "Look at these atheists. They are scared of a virus they can't see, but they don't believe in a God they can't see." And I'm like, look, it's not just that we can't see God. There's all kinds of reasons. Like we can't see gravity, but we can understand it as space-time curvature. We can measure it precisely, make precise predictions based on it, and we can see COVID-19. We have microscopes, electron microscopes, and it's in the name Corona. That's Spanish for crown, based on the little crowns coming out of it, right?
Mm,
That's a really dumb
geez.
meme going around.
Oh wow.
These
No.
people, I wonder how much they really think about these things, really think them through. You know what I mean? In my experience, not a whole lot. All right. Well, Jackson, any other good sci-fi you want to mention? You're a Star Trek fan, I know that.
Yeah.
As am I. I'm a big Star Trek fan.
Oh, hells yeah. I enjoy anything to do with space travel, encountering new things, new discoveries, right? And I believe like down the road, humanity will get to that point. With
I hope so.
that. Oh yeah. I
Keep going
mean
down the
like
right track, we'll get there. But
yeah.
it's a big question mark. Are we going to keep going that direction? So
Yeah, but if you really think about it, if humanity gets to that point, you have to think in the future. Our not ancestors, our descendants are going to look back and think like they're not going to know much about us, and like we're so special because we're living in a time where we are basically bridging the gap. We have been evolving. We life created on this planet that we're on, and you think our descendants way in the future is going to think back and think, wow, like how was life back in the day before when
Well,
my
we have
ancestors.
records now, so they'll be able to know us better than we knew people, 2,000
That's
years ago. I'd hope,
that's
unless
that's
some kind of
true.
apocalypse happens and wipes out all the digital records. Let's
Yeah,
hope that doesn't happen.
hope not, hope not. But no, I think we're really special to be living in this time, right? I mean, like, yeah, it may seem a little, we're looking in the future, but I know in the future they're going to be looking back, right? So that's
Yeah.
why I try to appreciate everything that we have here
Oh
with
yeah,
the earth and how the
I do too.
beauties of the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we need to do.
One of my favorite authors is Steven Pinker. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a Harvard psychologist. He has a book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined, and another book called Enlightenment Now. And he goes through with all these detailed graphs how everything has gotten better, like the decline of violence, poverty. It used to be 90% of the world lived in extreme poverty, and now it's 10%. And the same with illiteracy. It used to be 90% illiterate, and now it's like down to like 10%. And basically across even down to every possible measure has gone up big time. You know, so it's very
Life
encouraging and
expectancy, yeah.
inspiring when you think about. See, the way I put it in my book, A Justified Faith, is we've gone from cave dwellers to space explorers, and we've done that through the application of knowledge, science, education, not through blood sacrifice and cosmic superheroes and stuff like that. So
It's
it, it,
unfortunate, but
that's
I
why I
feel
call
that,
that faith justified, right? In
yeah.
opposition to religious faith. It's not really faith, but using it as a catchphrase to juxtapose it against religious faith, it's inspiring, and I think it is
Mhm.
justified, that overall arc of humanity, the overall trajectory. It's very inspiring,
Mhm.
and it's something
Yeah,
real. So
I, I believe that religion has sort of hindered us a little bit, right? But
a
I
little
can
bit,
sort of understand why it was there in the first place. Because again, they
yeah.
didn't have a really good system, certain rules and stuff like we do now, right? But I can understand, like,
If you don't know
almost I
about
look.
bacteria, you might think it's an angry god or a demon or a
Mm,
curse. You know, yeah, I get that.
yeah.
But we know better now, people.
Oh yeah,
No,
and that's what we need to
no,
do, and I believe that's what we need to teach our children too, right? I mean, like
totally.
we gotta pass it on, and make them become the people that can uh, devote themselves and to give to society, right? And make us better, right? Make society better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jackson, let us know what you're doing with your work with the Red Cross. I've heard you're doing a lot of good work up in Canada, around there. Yeah. So what have you been doing?
Well, I've been first. I started volunteering with my time with the Red Cross, humanitarian organization. Right. I really like their philosophy. Um, it's mostly based on helping everybody, regardless of their religious or race or political standpoint. Right. It doesn't matter. We help everybody.
Humanitarianism without dogma, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I started with the volunteering, and now I fell in love with it so much that I decided to make it my full-time career. So yeah, so I'm basically, my job is to look after people that have been involved in disasters, and it's mostly have to do with the responses. I'm currently on a deployment right now.
Okay.
We are helping travelers with quarantine. That now it's
Excellent.
become we ever since Canada has implemented a quarantine act, we're trying to do our best to try to slow down the spread of infection. Right. Unfortunately, these days there's a lot of people that don't really still believe in it, but again, we're doing our part to try to keep those numbers down. Right. And go
Awesome.
through this. Yeah.
Well, I applaud your work, man. That's very meaningful work that you're doing, with your
Thank you.
time. And we're all going through a lot of things, and it's great to have organizations like that and people that are willing to dedicate their time to go out and do that. So
Thank you.
yeah, well, it's been fun, man. My first little experiment here to try to grow my YouTube channel a little bit. Um, I've done some stuff before a couple years ago, and we're all in quarantine, so I thought, hey, let's try something new. So I guess this has been my quarantine conversations number one. And Jackson, man, it was great to catch up with you and had some thought provoking conversations. Uh, and I wish you well, man, and your endeavors and your aid work and all of that. And hopefully we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you. Yeah, I've
All right.
learned a lot, and thank you for the
Yeah,
conversation. Thanks for having me on.
absolutely. Well, peace out, man. Take
All right,
care.
take care. Bye bye.